Nobody mentioned we were going to do late night music tonight. This is surprising to me. Good morning. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, please give the staff another round of applause. The planning committee. I'm excited to be here with you this morning. I travel all over and I tell people wherever I go, I'm from the South with an F and not a TH, from the South. You know, there are many Southerners in here today, and y'all know we have the unique ability to just make up words. Yeah. It's in our DNA. We say words like fin to and fix it. Matter of fact, one of my favorite words is a made-up word. It's 5 syllables. One word. What you're not gonna do. Yeah, my mother said that a lot when I was growing up. My mother said stuff like, what you're not gonna do is keep running in and out of this house. That's what you're not gonna do. What you're not gonna do is stand in front of that refrigerator and hold that door open. Little boy, that's what you're not gonna do. What some of y'all not gonna do is sit out there and not laugh at jokes. That's what y'all not gonna do. It's a little different keynote today. But I'm from the South, from Camden, South Carolina, born and raised originally. Anybody from the northeast part of the country? Okay, clap for the northeast part of the country. I'm from the South, but I have a lot of family members from New York. Yeah, from New York. And people from New York have cool ways to tell you where they're from. Yeah, my cousins will come down every summer and they say stuff like, yo, I'm from money earning Mount Vernon, son. I'm from the boogie down Bronx, son. See, Queens? She just couldn't sit still to be quiet. I'm from Camden, South Carolina. What in the world am I supposed to say? I'm from cotton picking Camden. Collard green cooking Camden, son. Cornbread baking Camden, baby. And y'all know it would never fail. Every summer your classmates will go north. Then they come back to school with an accent. So you see them in school, they like, yo, what's up, son? What's up, money? I used to be like, why are you talking like that? You've been gone for 2 weeks. What you're not gonna do is act like you're from Brooklyn. That's what you're not doing. Another interesting thing about Southerners, we have these strange expressions in the South. Like, for instance, what do we say when the sun is shining and it's raining outside? The devil's beating his wife. There's a couple of people that are not from the South. They look a little confused right now. That's a common expression in the South. When the sun's shining and it's raining outside, Southerners say that the devil is beating his wife. I got a couple of questions. When did the devil get married? I've read the entire Bible. I've read nothing about a Miss Satan. And who would marry the devil? Who is sitting up on eHarmony looking at the devil's profile? To my girl, I know he got problems, but he sure is hot. Another thing about the South is we love nicknames in the South. Love nicknames. I realize there's some people I've been knowing my entire life. I don't know their real names. My brother called me the other day. He said, hey, man, you know, Mark Davis's mom passed away. like, I don't know Mark Davis, man. He was like, stank it, man. Stank your mama passed. I was like, why you ain't say that from the start? I need to give Stank a call. We even try to be funny with nicknames. We call big people nicknames like Tiny, Slim. We nickname people after food. I know a cornbread, a pork chop, and a collard green. I know this one dude, his nickname is Boss, and he ain't got no job. I'm like, who you the boss of, yourself? Yeah, but I think white dudes have the coolest nicknames. I really do. Because white dudes' nicknames go with them their entire life. White dudes have nicknames like Rusty, Skip, Chip. Like your nickname could be Chip. You could be the CEO of a bank. You could have Chip on your business cards. The brothers can't do that. Pookie can't be a branch manager at the bank. You don't trust your money with Pookie. We're like, right this way, Dr. Junebug will see you. I'm like, no, he will not. Now, that's thank you, Mama Doctor. I'm not going to that guy. That's going to be the guy. So I live in Columbia, South Carolina now, and I don't know if they're doing this here in North Carolina, but in Columbia, they're building a lot of new homes and subdivisions. But they're calling a lot of neighborhoods plantations. I don't know about you. I can't live on a plantation. We tried that already one time. That didn't work out quite so well. I was at the parade of homes with my wife. They had something in the window I wasn't familiar with. So I asked my wife, I said, hey, what are those called? She said, oh, those are called plantation shutters. It's like, I guess we won't be getting any of those. The word plantation makes me shudder. Like, y'all ain't got no freedom blinds up in here? No, I have a dream drapes. Y'all ain't know those? Civil right curtains, nowhere around. So I typically go into one of two rooms. I go into a room that has laughter, or I go into a room that needs laughter. And I think often that, especially in professional settings, we sometimes discount the power of laughter or humor. And I would like to submit, I think it's because there's something that folks would say is unprofessional about comedy or humor in the workplace. And I would like to tell you that humor is neutral. Humor's like money. It's what you choose to do with humor. You can take humor and be constructive. You can be encouraging. You can be inclusive. Or you can take humor to be destructive and belittling and to tear down. So I this morning want to share humor with you in a way that will inspire and build you up. And I also want to share with you my journey of leadership and laughter. Because when I first started this journey, I was a horrible comedian. I was bad. I was terrible. I was the funniest comedian in the car on the way to the show. Unfortunately, they don't pay you for that. And I'm not trying to be humble. I'm not trying to be modest. I was awful. I was terrible. And the reason, I had a few reasons, but one of the reasons was I disconnected who I was to what I was doing. So when I was a comedian in my mind, I was trying to be a comedian. I was trying to do things that I thought comedians would do. And I was separating Mike Goodwin from what I was doing on stage. And I was doing stand-up. It was bad. It was really bad. It was wrong. I wasn't connecting with people. I wasn't looking at the audience. I was up there for me. I was up there strutting around. You know, I would call what I was doing in my early days peacock comedy. You know, I was up on stage, look at me, look at my cool bow tie. That's what I was doing. I wasn't making eye contact. I was looking over the crowd. I wasn't talking to the audience. I was doing what I've deemed now, there's a phrase I use. I say that some things are not wrong. They just ain't right. I'm saying they're not against the law. It ain't wrong. It just ain't right. Like a thug that wears flip-flops. How you gonna be a tough guy with your toes out? That just ain't wrong. It ain't wrong. It just ain't right. What about a grown man skipping? You ever seen a grown man skip? That ain't wrong. It just ain't right. Because when you skip, you got to smile. Have you ever seen somebody skip and not smile? That ain't wrong. It just ain't right. That's a long way around. Should have skipped on the stage. So I'm gonna share this morning what I did to move my performances from mediocre to meaningful. And it goes in line with the insights that I'll talk about this morning with your theme of being a leader. So the first clip, and I didn't realize how big the room was. I should have. My audience is typically a little smaller than now. So this was the question I had to ask myself in the midst of doing these bad performances. I had to ask myself, and I think this is a question that all leaders should routinely ask ourselves. Are you operating at your full potential? And I looked at it, and I realized I wasn't. I wasn't being my unique self. I wasn't being whole. I was doing a version of what I thought other people wanted me to be. So one of my favorite movies from my childhood, if you haven't seen this movie, it's a movie called Karate Kid. I highly recommend it. This character here is Mr. Miyagi. And so there was a young character named young Daniel-san. And I found myself in Daniel-san's position because Daniel-san wanted to learn how to do karate, but he didn't want to learn the art of karate. He just wanted to learn how to punch and kick. But Mr. Miyagi needed him to learn the fundamentals. He needed him to learn the principle of wax on and wax off. Wax on and wax off. And that was a key ingredient to what I was missing in my career. So what I did, I started finding mentors. I started finding people who were doing what I wanted to do at a high level, and I started questioning, and I started spending time around him. And this was the first insight that I came up with on how to move myself from where I was to where I wanted to be. And the first insight I want to share is to be diligent. Had to be diligent. And one of my problems was I didn't see comedy as a skill. I didn't see it as a craft. All I saw comedy in my mind was a hobby. It was something I was doing on the side. It was, if I didn't have anything else going on, I would do it. So it wasn't a priority. So I had to make it a priority. I had to figure out, this is a skill, and now I must figure out how to become diligent in mastering the skill. What were the things I needed to do to master the skill? And I had a great work ethic. I just wasn't connecting it to what I was doing. One of my favorite quotes is a quote that says, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree. I spend the first 4 hours sharpening my axe." So I want to ask you today, are you swinging a dull axe? Because oftentimes in life we're swinging and we're doing things, but our axe is not sharp. And that's the importance of a conference like this. You can come and you get skills, you get information, you make relationships, connections with other people that help you to sharpen your axe, to make your work more efficient and effective. And so I would encourage you to think about ways in which you can hone your craft, sharpen your axe. Now, when I often do leadership talks and people thank you. I'm not going to make a sweat joke because that's what you put there in a not corporate setting. So you put a sweat joke, but no sweat joke goes right there. We just keep moving. But often when people talk about sharpening their axe, there's a statement that we often say that iron sharpens iron. And I agree with that. But what we don't talk about enough is the fact that when iron hits, there's sparks. There's conflict. There's problems. It's loud. It's noisy. It's not a polite thing when iron gets together with other iron. And unfortunately, in work environments, we don't want the conflict. We don't want sparks. We want to just get our work done and keep moving. But to be leaders, we have to have difficult conversations. We have to address, and we can disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable. We can look for a resolution. We can look for a solution to get the problem corrected. But sometimes we're so uneasy about not saying the right thing, not wanting to hurt anyone's feelings, not wanting to offend people. Well, people are going to get offended. That's not your goal. And in the conversation, we should say, I apologize. I did not mean to do that. But when iron gets together, it's not going to be butterflies and unicorns all the time. And so that's something as leaders that we have to have the resolve to have difficult conversations, to address conflict and issues. So I think that is important as we look at the idea of diligence. So the second thing went too fast. So in being diligent, I started to figure out, okay, what were the steps I needed to take in being diligent? The first step I needed to take was to prepare. I wasn't preparing. I was the type of person that I would drive on the way to a show, and I think about 5 jokes on the way. And I'd get right on stage and do those 5 jokes that I thought about in the car. And y'all would be sitting there just like people are sitting there right now. No laughter. And what I would do those 5 untested jokes first. Then I would get to the good stuff, and they were like, nah, we don't believe you anymore. We don't even think the good stuff is good because you just gave us 5 minutes of horrible jokes. So I had to realize, I had to prepare. I had to figure out what are the things I need to evaluate. Who's my audience? Who am I speaking to? what are we talking about? I needed to figure out how to prepare. So I learned that if I wanted to do new material, what you should do, you do established material, then you put new stuff in, and then you end on the other side with established material. I started to learn those things because I prepared. I remember when I first started in comedy, people would come up to me and say, hey, Mike, you still doing your little stand-up? Still doing your little jokes? People like to put little in front of the stuff you're doing to belittle you, you know. Oh, I heard you at your little conference this past week. How did that go? You know? People do that kind of stuff, but I don't do that to other people. I don't do that. I saw a friend of mine, she had just gotten married. I didn't say, hey, heard about your little ceremony. Let me see your little ring. Where is your little husband? I didn't do that to people. But that was a technique that I learned. I just demonstrated a technique when I started to prepare. Comedy is a rhythmic thing. So comedy typically works in threes. So there's a beat to threes. So I said, hey, I heard about your little ceremony. Let me see your little ring. Where is your little husband? But I didn't know those things until I started to prepare. So preparation was the thing that helped me to become diligent. The second thing that helped me in the diligent journey was to find purpose in my work, to find purpose in your work. Many of you are in this room not because it's a job, for many of you it's a calling. You feel compelled to do the work that you do. You want to help people change their stations in life. And so it's vitally important for us to have a why to the things that we do. I saw this statistic, and it's pretty sad. It said of the country's approximately 100 million full-time employees, 51% aren't engaged at work, meaning they feel no real connection to their jobs and thus do the bare minimum. So it's important for us to find purpose in the work that we do. I find it interesting, people will ask me about comedy. You know, comedy is such a interesting line of work. Folks, they'll say, hey man, how did you find purpose in doing stand-up? And the question that they typically ask was, I the class clown? That's what they say, hey man, were you the class clown in school? And I wasn't the class clown. I was the guy that told the class clown what to do. I was the throw the rock, hide the hand guy. That's what I was, the class instigator. That was my role. But interesting enough, I did find purpose in humor at a very early age. So I'm the oldest of three, and I grew up in a two-parent home, but it was a very dysfunctional environment. My parents had a very, very contentious marriage. They were always arguing. There was always conflict. We were walking around on eggshells at all times. My father was an alcoholic, so you just never knew when things would just turn. And so I remember I was 8 years old. This day is so vivid. I was 8 years old. Parents got into an argument. And my brother and I shared the room, so we were in our room. My sister's room was across the hall, and their argument spilled out of their bedroom into the hallway. We didn't really have a big home, so the hallway and my room were right there. So they're in the hallway arguing, and my brother and my sister and I, we came out of the room, and we were, asking our parents, pleading with them to stop. And I'm 8. And I remember standing there feeling absolutely helpless, like I couldn't physically do anything. I couldn't remove my father or take my mother to a safe place. And what was happening, my mother was barricading the hallway so that my dad couldn't leave. He was trying to leave the house. She wouldn't let him leave. So I'm there, I'm crying. My sister's crying, my brother's crying. Finally, my father grabs my mother and slams her down and leaves. So I'm sitting there. My mother, she's on the floor crying. She gets up, goes to the kitchen, starts preparing dinner like it was a regular day. So I'm having all these thoughts, and I go to the living room, and I'm standing there, and I'm upset, I'm angry. I'm just trying to figure out why is it that my parents are always arguing. And the way that my mind works, it doesn't take long for something funny. It doesn't matter how tragic. It doesn't matter. I'm at a funeral. I'm thinking of something that's not appropriate at that moment. So in that moment, I had one of those thoughts. And I said, "Hey, Mom," and I said some funny thing. I don't even remember. I said some funny thing. And my mother laughed. And something clicked in my mind that, oh man, I have the ability to make my mother feel better by the funny things that I say. And that's all I needed to hear, because I knew they were going to argue again, and I would have my time to shine. So my parents would get into these arguments, and after the dust settled, I would come out and I'd do my thing, doing my show. And I knew I was getting good, because my father, if he didn't leave, he would go in his room and shut the door. And I would have him laughing so loud that my dad would be like, "Where's all that noise going? What are you doing all that noise? All that noise." I was like, "Oh, I'm killing tonight, man. I'm doing it tonight." So when I stand in front of you, I'm not just looking to be entertaining. I want you to be healed, and I want to allow you to be released. Yeah, thank you for... From the challenges of life, we're talking about at our table. You know, sorrow doesn't care about your schedule. It doesn't care. It doesn't care if you have a presentation. It doesn't care if you have a conference to go to. Sorrow happens. So it's important that we are deliberate in doing things to combat sorrow, that we're looking for opportunities to laugh, to smile, to just feel good. And so that is the purpose of what I bring when I do my stand-up. And so I realized that, okay, I have purpose. And then the other thing I realized when you're being diligent is you have to do the work. You got to roll your sleeves up, and you got to get in there and do the work. But I'm amazed at the conversations I have with people. I see it on social media, and I'm not a down on social media kind of guy, but I see it all the time. Someone will get on social media and say, "Hey guys, I want to lose 20 pounds by the end of the year." And all the comments is like, "Way to go, girl, congratulations, you can do it." I'm like, they ain't even done nothing yet. They just typed the words. Like, let's lose 3-4 pounds first before we start. People like to talk about the work. They like to email about the work. They like to do TED Talks about the work. Nobody want to do the work. You got to get down and do the work. You do the work. You know, I've noticed this because young comedians will come to me all the time that's not doing the work, and they'll ask questions. And I figured out when you're doing the work, you can ask better questions because you're in there. You know what's happening. So comedians will come up to me all the time, and they'll say, "Hey, Mike, how do I get more gigs? How do I get more opportunities? How do I get more shows?" You know what? No one has ever asked me, "Hey, Mike, how can I be a better comedian?" Because that's the question you ask when you're doing the work. Because if you become a better comedian, you'll get more gigs. You'll get more opportunities. You'll get more shows. And so that's vitally important that we but that we do the actual work. I'm trying to share this with my children. My daughter, she understands it. My son, oh, my goodness. So my children, so I have 2 children. I have a daughter who's the oldest. We had a hard time trying to figure out what to name our daughter. So we named our daughter a throwback name like throwback jerseys. Yeah, we named our daughter Essie May Pearl. Little Essie May. It's a good Southern name. Little Essie May is what we call her. I'm just messing with y'all. You see the looks on some of your faces. What you're not going to do is sit out there and judge what I named my daughter. That's what you're not going to. I'm just kidding, y'all. That's not her name. Her name is Gertrude. That's worse than that. So I have my daughter, and now I have my son. I got my boy. But I feel like my daughter set us up. Yeah, my daughter's tremendously different than this little boy. My daughter, she's polite, mannerable, quiet. But this little boy, y'all, as soon as his feet hit the floor, he's in the room like, yeah, 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 yeah. I'm like, am I raising Busta Rhymes in my house? I'm like, what the? 6 o'clock in the morning, little boy go to the bathroom. Da 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 da. If you don't sit your behind down, man, we're here trying to sleep. And I was concerned about the little guy because he wasn't as sharp as his sister, you know what I'm saying? A couple crayons missing out the box, that's all I'm trying to communicate. Like when I first started allowing my son to dress himself, I wasn't prepared for how he would walk out the room. I wasn't ready. Y'all, one time my son walked up, he had buttoned his shirt up the side of his body. I said, son, how'd you even do that, son? Shoes never on the right foot, so his feet, they poke out like that. And he just be running around, having a great time. I'm like, that don't feel odd to you at all? But I was most concerned about the little guy was when he started trying to communicate. He started trying to speak. I didn't know who my son was talking to. This is how my son would sound like when he was walking around. We didn't know it at the time, but my daughter had the ability to interpret that language. So my son running around talking about, and my daughter's like, Mama, Michael wants some grapes. I said, how in the world does, skeet out, nom, mean grapes? I remember watching the game, he got to scatting again. Skeet out. My daughter's like, Daddy, Michael want to watch Law and Order. Special Victims Unit. I'm like, get y'all little behinds in the bed. As a matter of fact, tell your brother this. Skeet up, bop. My daughter's like, Daddy said, what you're not going to do is sit up here and watch this television. That's what you're not going to do. But I was talking to my son about doing the work. I walked into my son, he was on a computer on YouTube watching little kids play flag football. I said, boy, what in the world are you doing? Get your behind outside and run around or something. So I signed my son up for flag football, and that was a waste of money right there. It was horrible. Those boys lost like 5 games in a row. Got the coach, he's a good Christian guy, bad coach. I'm like, man, I want a little heathen in my coach. I think that's... Because he's sending mixed messages to my son, and I don't want him to learn. Like, so my son, they tied a game, so my son came home, he happy, hopping around. I said, hey, man, what you so happy about? My son looked at me, he said, Dad, Coach said that when we tie, it's like both teams won. No, son. Coach lied. Yeah, tie's worse than a loss, son. They put it on the other side. That's how bad it is. But that's where we are with him. And so I'm constantly talking to him about doing the work. And so that's the first insight that I learned was to be diligent. So the second insight that I learned, because I started being diligent, so the second insight, so I ask this question wherever I go, every place I go. So if you were to call 911 100 times, how many times would you want someone to answer the phone? Every time, 100 times. I've never had someone yell out 85, 73. Every time you call, you want folks to answer. And so that's the dilemma I found myself in, because I started to become diligent. Became diligent, started getting better, started getting more opportunities. Then what happened, the thing that I used to look at as a blessing now became a burden. So I was starting to show up to places without a feeling of gratitude. I was showing up entitled. So I realized that in the midst of being diligent, one of the most important things for us to do is to be present, is to be where our feet are. What can happen is you can become so good at what you're doing, you go on autopilot. You're just going through the motions. You know the routine. I've done this 1,000 times, so I'll just get up there. I'll wing it. I'll figure something out. And you rob the folks that you're in front of a great opportunity, a great experience. So I had to realize that it's important for me to be present. Because I realized I was on stage, but physically, but mentally, I was somewhere else. So I had to start, and I'm still making that adjustment. You know, you've heard you could live in one of three places. You can live in the past, you can live in the future, but I think the most profitable place for us to live is in the present. Be where our feet are. And I'm challenged by this. My schedule's picked up tremendously. So, matter of fact, this past Tuesday, I think I was in Winston-Salem. I'm here today. Tomorrow, I'm in Somerville. So my schedule's picking up. And so sometimes I find myself looking to the next thing. And in athletics, they call it trap games. You know, if you're not prepared for the game that you're playing, you could have a bad showing. And so this happened to me recently. I was in South Georgia, doing an event. It was on a Wednesday morning, a Wednesday afternoon. It was a luncheon for the leaders of FCA in South Georgia. Went, and I'd done something for them before, so I was like, oh, they know who I am. I had some familiarity there. So I got there. There's 40 people, small room, 40 people. I walk in, South Georgia. I walk in. There's one other African American in the room. South Georgia. I'm like, what in the world is going on? Are these people pranking me? Like, is this a dope? They got some black people in the corner somewhere. They're going to bring them out a little later. I'm like, this is South Georgia. I'm not talking about Wyoming. I'm not talking about Montana. I'm talking about South Georgia. So I walk in, and I could feel the tension of, what's the comedian going to say? How is he going to address the elephant in the room? And it was tight. It was tense. And I chose not to be present. I said, man, I'm not dealing with this. I'm not going to say a word. So I just powered through the presentation. I did okay. It was fine. But I didn't say a word. And I could see people's faces like, oh, he's going to say it now. Oh, he's going to say it now. And I didn't say it. I didn't say a word. And I got in the car, and I'm driving home, and I challenged him. I said, what were you thinking about? Why weren't you present? Why didn't you just address it? It would have alleviated the tension. We would have went on. And it wouldn't have been that difficult to address. All I had to do was look at the woman and say, hey, ma'am, are these people holding you against your will? Just wink. Because I'm going to leave, but I'm going to send somebody back to get you some help. And it would have been that simple. It would have been that simple. And there are opportunities that we miss because we aren't present. We choose to be distracted for one reason or another. I was in the car recently, and I was thinking about this. I said, okay, I'm going to be present. I'm going to just think. And a radio commercial came on for LASIK and LASIK Plus, the eye corrector surgery. And I was listening to it. I was like, man, what in the world is LASIK Plus? They don't correct everything in LASIK? Because like there's no other procedure that has a plus on it. You can't get a vasectomy plus. Like, yeah, we're going to cut you off. We're going to add a little bit down there for you. Can you imagine the wait list for that surgery? That'd be, Let me get back on my notes. I should have been on my notes. That's what happened when I go off script. You need me on my script. So it's important for us to be present. I saw this statistic. It said, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, approximately 69% of collisions happen within 10 miles of our home. It's because we're distracted. We're not focused. We're not present. And it's even that much more difficult for us now because we show up with the distractions in our hand. We walk around with the distractions. And I'm distracted. I find it interesting now. There used to be a time when we didn't know information. We just didn't know. Now we can Google anything. You can just Google it right there. I remember when I was a kid, you couldn't Google stuff. When I was a kid, if you wanted information, you had to go to the encyclopedia. And I was a weak little kid, so I couldn't pick up the encyclopedia. So I had no information. I remember when I was a kid and I didn't know how to spell a word, I would ask my mother how to spell a word. You know what my mother would tell me? Look it up in the dictionary. I was like, Mom, I don't know how to spell a word. I spent 4 weeks in the L's looking for elephant. Like, Mom, I see leprosy. I don't see nothing but no elephant in here. Almost passed out looking for pneumonia. I was like, I don't have no idea. So it's important for us not to be distracted, for us to be present. And I was thinking, what are some other things that cause us not to be present? And I know in the work environment that we often don't think about is bitterness. Bitterness. Sometimes things don't go the way that you wanted them to go, but you don't get a new job. And if you don't address it, there's the root of bitterness that just starts to plant a little bit of seed, and then it may grow, and it's there, and you've not addressed it. So it causes you to not be present. I used to work at a school, and every summer we would do a summer reading. They would give us a book for a summer reading. And in the fall, we would come back, and they said, we're going to infuse this in the curriculum. We're going to have these affinity groups. This is going to be our vision for the next year. So we go home, we read the book, we come back, we have one meeting, and never talk about the book again. Never talk about the book. And we would do this for a couple of summers. And I remember sitting in a meeting one time, and somebody just went off. Well, giving us another book. We ain't going to do nothing. You're wasting all this money. And I was like, that's bitterness right there. This person is letting a whole forest of bitterness just grow in their lives. So make sure that if you're doing something that you're following the procedures and policies of what it is that you said you're going to do. And also another way to be present is to have accountability partners. Have someone that's going to hold you accountable to the things that you said you want to do. So enlist folks to help you on your journey of being present by having someone in which you're accountable to. And last but not least, my last insight that I learned is to be generous. In entertainment, it's a very narcissistic environment. I work in an environment where it didn't really matter your talent. In some cases, your celebrity can get you access to things, and you cannot be as talented as someone. So I've started to realize that I want to go against the grain in this environment and be more generous. Look for opportunities to be more generous. Look for opportunities to serve and not look to be served. Often when I think about generosity, I think about my grandmother. My grandmother's one of the most generous people that I know. And she had a great sense of humor. I want to share this joke with you that my grandmother shared. It's one of those jokes that you probably could tell again, but we'll see at the end of the joke. So my grandmother said there's only two things to worry about in life. She's an older Christian woman, so this is her joke. So she says that it's not going to offend anyone, but I'm going to say hell, so that somebody might be offended. You don't know what offends people. Nah, damn, be careful. But no, my grandmother says the only two things in life that you worry about, whether you're healthy or whether you're sick. If you're healthy, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you're sick, you got two things to worry about. Whether you're going to get better, whether you're going to get worse. You get better, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you get worse, you got two things to worry about. Whether you're going to live, whether you're going to die. If you live, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you die, you got two things. Whether you're going to heaven, whether you're going to hell. If you go to heaven, you ain't got nothing to worry about. But if you go to hell, you got two things to worry about. Original or extra crispy? That's the So I don't want y'all to work. So you got four things to worry about, and you mess up the joke. So this is but it's important for us to have a spirit of generosity. It's important for us to look for opportunities to share our talents, our wisdom, our insight, our time, and most importantly, I think in this environment in which we live, our kindness, our empathy, and our sympathy. Look at it from someone else's perspective. Don't just come to the table with all the answers. Be generous in allowing other people to share their perspectives. Also, I think that is vitally important as leaders and what we're doing in our organizations. And so as I conclude, I hope that I've said something that has signaled something in your mind, maybe something that you want to evaluate to do a little bit differently. And in the spirit of generosity, I'll share one more joke, and then I'll get out of your way. So I think a lot about my childhood because I'm a parent now, and we're still doing some bad habits with children that someone did with us. I'm guilty of this. Like, for instance, why are we still teaching children nursery rhymes? Have y'all read these things? They're awful. There was an old lady that lived in a shoe. She had so many children. She didn't know what to do. So she fed them broth without any bread and whipped them all soundly and put them to bed. Yeah, that lady going to jail. You can't raise children like that in 2019. Peter, pumpkin eater, had a wife. He couldn't keep her. He put her in a pumpkin shell. And there he kept her very well. Yeah, Peter has a Netflix documentary coming out. The Making of a Murderer, Pumpkin Pie Style. This is what Peter has. Even dumb songs. The dumb songs that our children are learning, that I learned. My son was singing this dumb little song the other day. 10 little monkeys jumping on the bed. One fell off, bumped his head. Mama called the doctor, and the doctor said, then it was 9 little monkeys. Then 8 little monkeys. Then 7 little monkeys. I'm like, this doctor not gonna call Child Protective Services on this woman? This woman's clearly overwhelmed with these children. She need to call the old lady in the shoe. I bet you that Bet you they won't jump on that bed no more after she come over there. Every time it would rain, somebody would sing this dumb song that I started singing to my son. It's raining. It's pouring. The old man is snoring. He went to bed and bumped his head and couldn't wake up in the morning. I'm like, why am I singing these homicide hymns to my son before he go to sleep? The boy gonna have nightmares. So in conclusion, I hope that you walk away with some thought around one of the three insights: to be diligent, to be present, be generous. Take a moment to think about these three insights that I've shared and choose one that you want to have an action step for and move our leadership ability from one level to another. I think the purpose of my talk is to identify the skill that I put together, my leadership and my laughter, to be my authentic self. Each one of us have skills that we have, and you're not being your authentic self if you're not bringing your entire self to the table in your work. And so your combination may not be leadership and laughter, but it's something. And I would encourage you to put those two together like Reese's and peanut butter. You can't have the peanut butter without the Reese's. You can't have my leadership without laughter. And so I asked you a question: do you know the connection between leadership and laughter? And the answer is people. It's simply people. We've all heard it said that if you're a leader and no one is following you, you're just out taking a walk. And if you're a comedian and no one is laughing, you're probably Amy Schumer. No, I'm sorry. This is not. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That shouldn't be in there. That was. I'm being generous. I'm sorry. That's just. You're bombing. That's what you're doing. You're bombing. So it's important to be real with ourselves and make real connections with people to avoid both walking by ourselves and bombing. Thank y'all so much. Y'all been wonderful.